The screams didn't last long. That's what the witnesses would say later, their voices hollow, their eyes distant. A few seconds of terror, maybe 10, maybe 15. And then, silence. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes you forget how to breathe. 5 lions, 1 man, and a decision made in a single, irreversible moment that would end everything. This is the story of Jian Rangkharasamee, a name you've probably never heard. A face lost in the endless scroll of tragedy. But his death became something else entirely. A viral nightmare. A cautionary tale whispered across continents. Because Jian didn't die in some remote wilderness. He didn't fall victim to nature's unpredictability in the African savannah. No, Jian died in a place where lions were supposed to be controlled, where humans believed they were in charge, where safety was an illusion built on iron bars and overconfidence. And on that day, in front of horrified onlookers, that illusion shattered. Jian Rangkharasamee was 28 years old when he died. Young, full of life. The kind of man who smiled easily and believed in second chances. He had grown up in a modest neighborhood. Not rich, not poor, just somewhere in between where dreams are built slowly, brick by brick. His family adored him. His mother, a small woman with hands worn from years of labor, used to tell stories about how Jian would bring home stray animals as a child, wounded birds, starving cats, once even a dog with a broken leg that he'd found whimpering behind a dumpster. He had a soft heart, she would say, tears streaming down her face in the weeks after his death. Too soft for this world. Jian had worked odd jobs throughout his 20s. Construction, delivery, restaurant kitchens. Nothing permanent. Nothing that felt like a future. He wasn't lazy, far from it. He was searching. Searching for something that made him feel alive. Something that gave his life meaning beyond the routine grind of bills and survival. And then, almost by accident, he found it. Animals, big animals, exotic animals. The kind that made your pulse quicken just by looking at them. He started working at a private animal park. Not a zoo. Not some regulated, inspected facility with veterinarians and safety protocols drilled into every staff member's brain. This was something smaller, murkier. A place where tourists paid cash to get close to creatures they'd only seen on screens. A place where the line between conservation and exploitation blurred until you couldn't tell which side you were standing on. Jian loved it. For the first time in his life, he felt purpose. He worked long hours, cleaning enclosures, preparing food, watching the animals move with that raw, primal grace that reminds you just how small you really are. He learned their routines, their moods, their silent language of ear flicks and tail swishes. He felt connected to something ancient and powerful, something beyond the noise of human existence. His co-workers liked him. He was reliable, cheerful, always willing to take the shift no one else wanted. But there was something else too. A recklessness. A tendency to push boundaries just a little too far. He'd lean closer to the enclosures than he should. He'd make jokes about how the lions recognized him, how they wouldn't hurt him because they knew him. He'd wave off warnings with a laugh and a shrug. "They're just big cats," he'd say. "You just have to respect them." Respect. That word would haunt everyone who knew him after he was gone. Lions, Panthera leo, kings of the savannah, apex predators carved by evolution into perfect killing machines. An adult male can weigh over 500 pounds. Their jaws generate a bite force of over 600 pounds per square inch. Enough to crush bone. Enough to sever a human spine in a single snap. Their claws, retractable and razor-sharp, can tear through flesh like paper. They hunt in coordinated packs, communicating through gestures and sounds invisible to human eyes and ears. But here's what most people don't understand. Lions in captivity are not domesticated. They are not pets. They are not friends. You can raise a lion from a cub, bottle feed it, sleep beside it, and it will still carry within its DNA 10,000 generations of predatory instinct. One bad day, one moment of stress or confusion or territorial aggression, and the switch flips. The 5 lions at the park were magnificent. 3 males, 2 females. golden coats rippling over coiled muscle, eyes like amber stones, watchful and ancient. They had been born in captivity, raised by humans, fed by humans, photographed by thousands of humans. But they were still lions, still wild at their core. The enclosure was large, but not large enough. Concrete floors, high fences, a viewing platform where tourists could stand and take selfies pretending they were on safari. The lions paced sometimes, back and forth, that repetitive movement that animal behaviorists call a stereotypy, a sign of stress, of a mind slowly unraveling in confinement. There had been incidents before, small ones. A swipe at a handler that missed by inches, a growl that lasted a beat too long, a lioness charging the fence during feeding time, slamming against the metal with enough force to make the entire structure shudder. The staff talked about it quietly, nervously. But nothing changed. No additional training, no improved safety protocols, just whispered warnings and unspoken fear. And Jian kept working, kept smiling, kept believing he was safe. The problems started small, so small you could ignore them if you wanted to. And people did. 3 weeks before Jian died, one of the male lions, the largest one they called Simba, a name so cliché it would have been funny if it weren't so tragic, had refused to enter his night enclosure. He stood in the outdoor area, muscles tense, staring at the handlers with an expression that wasn't quite aggression but wasn't submission either. Took an hour and 3 staff members to finally coax him inside. No one reported it. Why would they? Lions have moods. They're animals. 2 weeks before, a tourist had dropped her phone into the enclosure. It fell between the bars and landed near where the lions were resting. Jian had volunteered to retrieve it. He waited until the lions moved to the far end, then quickly slipped through a maintenance gate, grabbed the phone and got out. The whole thing took maybe 30 seconds. But during those 30 seconds, one of the lionesses had turned and watched him. Just watched. Her eyes locked on his body, her muscles coiling. She didn't charge, didn't roar, just watched. And when Jian told the story later, he laughed about it. Said she was probably just curious, probably just wondering what he was doing. 1 week before, there had been a feeding mistake. Someone, nobody would admit who, had forgotten to separate the lions before throwing in the meat. Normally, they fed them one at a time to avoid competition and aggression. But that day, all 5 lions received their food simultaneously. And they fought. Not playfully, violently, blood drawn. Roars echoing across the park, tourists running in panic. By the time staff regained control, one of the younger males had a gash across his shoulder. The lions were agitated for hours afterward, pacing, snarling at each other, eyes wild. Still nothing changed. And then came the day. It was a Tuesday. Unremarkable in every way. The sky was overcast, threatening rain but never delivering. The park wasn't crowded. Maybe 30 visitors total, scattered across the grounds. Jian had worked the morning shift. He was tired. His back ached from hauling bags of meat and shoveling waste. He should have gone home. Part of him wanted to. But they were short-staffed, and someone needed to do the afternoon enclosure inspection. He volunteered. Of course he did. The enclosure inspection was routine. Walk the perimeter. Check for damage to the fencing. Make sure the water troughs were full. Make sure the lions looked healthy. It should have taken 15 minutes. Jian entered through the outer corridor, a narrow walkway that ran along the back of the enclosure, separated from the lions by a chain-link fence and a secondary gate. He carried a clipboard. A radio clipped to his belt crackled with static and distant voices. The lions were lying in the shade, lazy, content, full from their morning feeding. Jian made notes, checked the fence. Everything looked fine. He was about to leave when he noticed it. One of the secondary gates, the one that led from the outer corridor directly into the main enclosure, was slightly ajar. Not wide open, just unlocked. The latch hadn't been secured properly. An oversight. A mistake. The kind that happens 100 times and means nothing 99 of them. Jian stared at the gate. He should have radioed for backup, should have left and reported it. But he was tired. And it was such a small thing, he just needed to close it. Lock it. 5 seconds. What could happen in 5 seconds? He stepped forward. The first lion moved before Jian even touched the gate. Simba, the big male. He rose from his resting position in one fluid motion, eyes locked on Jian. Not curious, not playful. Hunting. The other lions noticed, their heads lifted, bodies tensing. And in that instant, Jian realized his mistake. He froze, hand halfway to the latch, heart suddenly hammering against his ribs. "It's okay," he whispered, though whether to the lions or himself, nobody would ever know. "It's okay." It wasn't okay. Simba charged, 400 pounds of muscle and rage covering 20 feet in less than 2 seconds. Jian tried to move, tried to pull back, but his body betrayed him, sluggish with shock. The gate swung fully open as Simba slammed into it, and then the lion was through, into the corridor, into the space where humans were supposed to be safe. Jian screamed, a raw, primal sound of pure terror. He turned and ran, but there was nowhere to go. The corridor was a dead end, 10 feet long with walls on 3 sides. He pounded on the outer door, the one that led to safety, but it was locked from the outside. Security protocol. You needed a key. His key was in his pocket, but his hands were shaking too badly to find it. Simba hit him like a freight train. They went down together, Jian's body crumpling beneath the lion's weight. The impact drove the air from his lungs. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the crushing pressure and the white-hot explosion of pain as claws raked across his back, tearing through his shirt, through his skin, through muscle. He tried to scream again, but nothing came out. Just a choked, wet gasp. And then the others came through the gate, 5 lions, all of them now in the corridor. The space was too small for them, too cramped, and it triggered something primal. Pack mentality, feeding frenzy. They swarmed over Jian's body like waves crashing on shore, biting, clawing, pulling. His arm vanished into Simba's jaws. He felt the bones snap, a sickening crunch that seemed impossibly loud. One of the lionesses bit down on his leg, another tore at his shoulder. He couldn't tell any more which pain was which. It all blurred into one endless screaming agony. Somewhere, distantly, he heard voices, shouting, running footsteps. His co-workers had heard the screams, had seen what was happening through the viewing windows. They were yelling, banging on the glass, trying to distract the lions. Someone was calling 911. Someone else was grabbing tranquilizer guns. But it was too late. It had been too late the moment Simba charged. Jian's vision started to fade, gray creeping in from the edges. He stopped fighting, stopped trying to push them away. His body went limp. And maybe, in those final moments, there was a kind of peace. Or maybe there was just darkness, just the cold, quiet void rushing up to meet him. The last thing he might have seen was amber eyes, ancient and indifferent, the eyes of a predator doing what predators do. And then nothing. The emergency response was chaos, pure screaming chaos. By the time park security managed to unlock the outer door and open it, Jian had been under the lions for nearly 3 minutes. 3 minutes that felt like hours. They fired tranquilizer darts, but tranquilizers don't work instantly. It takes minutes for the drugs to spread through a lion's bloodstream, to slow its heart, to cloud its mind. And these lions were in a frenzy, adrenaline coursing through them. They barely noticed the darts piercing their hides. Security fired more darts, and more, desperate, terrified. One of the lionesses finally stumbled, her legs buckling. She collapsed near Jian's motionless body. Then another lion went down, and another. Simba was the last. He stood over Jian's body, blood staining his muzzle, eyes still burning with that terrible ancient fire. He roared once, a sound that shook the walls. And then he too fell. Paramedics rushed in the moment the lions were down. They knew it was hopeless. They'd known from the moment they arrived and saw the blood pooling beneath the outer door, seeping out in dark rivulets. But they tried anyway. That's what paramedics do. They tried. Jian's body was barely recognizable. His face was intact, somehow spared, his eyes closed as if he were sleeping. But everything else, The damage was catastrophic. Massive trauma to his torso. His arm nearly severed. Deep lacerations covering his back and legs. Bite wounds that had crushed vital organs. He had lost too much blood. Far too much. Even if they'd reached him in the first 30 seconds, even if they'd had a surgical team standing by, it wouldn't have mattered. They pronounced him dead at the scene. 28 years old. A soft heart in a brutal world. Gone. The aftermath was a media firestorm. By evening, Jian's name was trending worldwide. Videos taken by tourists on their phones, shaky and distant but still clear enough to see the horror, spread across social media like wildfire. News outlets picked up the story. International headlines. Man mauled to death by lions. Tragic zoo incident claims life. 5 lions kill worker in gruesome attack. Jian's family was destroyed. His mother couldn't leave her bed for weeks. She kept his room exactly as he'd left it. Clothes still in the closet, shoes by the door, waiting for him to come home. His younger sister stopped speaking for days. Just sat in silence, staring at his photograph, unable to process that he was gone. The park was shut down immediately. Investigations launched. Inspectors descended on the facility like vultures, picking apart every protocol, every decision, every shortcut. They found violations everywhere. Inadequate fencing, insufficient staff training, no emergency response plan. The secondary gates that should have been secured with double locks had only single latches. The enclosures that should have been inspected daily had been checked once a week. The lions that should have been separated during feedings had been kept together to save time. It was negligence. Criminal negligence, and Jian had paid for it with his life. The owner of the park was arrested, charged with multiple violations of animal welfare and workplace safety laws. He tried to blame Jian, said he'd been careless, said he'd ignored training. But the evidence told a different story. There had been no proper training, no safety drills, no protocols. Just corner cutting and profit margins. The 5 lions were another controversy. Animal rights groups demanded they be spared. They're just animals, they said. They were acting on instinct. It's not their fault. Others called for them to be euthanized immediately. They've tasted human blood, they said. They're too dangerous now. In the end, 3 of the lions were transferred to a sanctuary. A real one this time, with proper facilities and trained professionals. The other 2, including Simba, were euthanized. The decision was made quietly, without fanfare. They injected the drugs while the lions slept. Peaceful, painless. A kindness Jian hadn't been afforded. Months passed. The story faded from headlines. People moved on to the next tragedy, the next viral horror. But Jian's family didn't move on. How could they? At his funeral, his mother placed a photograph of him as a child on his casket. In the picture, he was holding a kitten, smiling that bright, innocent smile. She touched the photo with trembling fingers and whispered, "He just wanted to help them. He just wanted them to be safe." The irony was unbearable. Here's the truth they don't tell you in the documentaries. Wild animals don't have morality. They don't choose to kill or choose to spare. They simply are. They react to stimuli, to threats, to opportunities, to instinct coded into their cells over millions of years. The lions that killed Jian weren't evil. They weren't vengeful. They were just lions, doing what lions do when the barriers between them and prey collapse. But humans? We should know better. We build the cages, we create the illusions of control. We charge admission so people can stand close to danger and feel that electric thrill of proximity to something powerful and deadly. And we cut corners. We get lazy. We assume it'll be fine because it's been fine before. Until it isn't. Jian Rangkharasamee believed he was safe. He believed the barriers would hold. He believed his respect for the animals would somehow protect him. And maybe in another world, in a facility that valued life over profit, in a system that didn't fail at every level, he would have been right. But not in this world. Not on that day. The last thing to understand is this. It didn't have to happen. Every single element that led to Jian's death was preventable. The unlocked gate, the inadequate training, the overworked staff, the stressed lions. Every link in that chain of tragedy could have been broken with care, with attention, with basic human decency. But it wasn't. And so a young man with a soft heart and a bright smile died screaming in a concrete corridor, torn apart by animals he thought he understood. His family grieves, his friends remember, and somewhere, in a sanctuary far away, 3 lions who will never comprehend what happened that day live out their lives in enclosures that are finally big enough. The screams didn't last long, just a few seconds, just long enough to echo forever.